I didn't believe in ghosts. I mean, I wasn't arrogant about it. I just thought, if there were such things, I would have experienced one by now. You don't grow up in a house full of trauma, loss, and long Midwest winters without thinking something out there might be watching you. But still, I never saw anything. Nothing I couldn't explain. Until 2015. That's when my wife and I moved to Atchison, Kansas. We were looking for something quiet. Life in Chicago had burned us out. I was drowning in tech contracts and late-night meetings. Michelle had just lost her mother to cancer and didn't want to be around reminders anymore. So when we found a listing for a small Victorian-style rental home just a few blocks from downtown Atchison, we didn't hesitate. It was cheap, it was furnished. It was available immediately. We didn't ask why. The house was beautiful, in a dated and tired kind of way. 2 stories, a steep staircase, pale yellow siding, overgrown hedges, and a mailbox that leaned too far to one side. There was this strange charm to it, like something out of a forgotten storybook. I should have seen that as a warning. The locals called it the Sallie house. I didn't know that when we moved in. We found out 3 days later when someone from the grocery store, an older woman in a green apron, saw our address on the loyalty card and went pale. She leaned across the counter and asked, "You live in the little house on 2nd Street, the one with the white trim?" I nodded. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You should leave." I laughed. She didn't. Michelle brushed it off as small-town superstition, but I started digging. That's when I learned the story. The house had belonged to a doctor in the early 1900s. He ran his practice out of the main floor and lived upstairs with his family. One day, a young girl, around 6 or 7, was brought to him with severe abdominal pain. The legend says the doctor began operating before the anesthesia took effect. She screamed in agony until she died on the table. Her name was Sallie, and if you believe the stories, she never left. The first week in the house was quiet, just enough creaks and groans in the night to remind you the place was old. But by the 2nd week, things started to shift. It began with cold spots, pockets of air that seemed to hang heavy around certain corners of the house, especially near the staircase. Michelle would walk through them and get goosebumps up her arms, even when the heat was blasting. Then the lights began flickering. The hallway light would blink 3 times at exactly 3:14 a.m. each night. I tested it. I watched the clock. I changed the bulb. I replaced the switch. It didn't matter. The blinking continued. And then there were the whispers. I worked late most nights. Michelle would be in bed by 11 and I'd be on my laptop in the study past midnight. That's when I started hearing what sounded like someone breathing just behind me. Not loud, soft and wet and too close. Sometimes it came with a voice, a whisper, 1 word, maybe 2. Never loud enough to make out, but always enough to freeze me in place. One night, I stood up suddenly and spun around. No one. The whispering stopped, but my chair, which I'd just left, slowly rolled back on its own. We told ourselves it was nerves, or the house settling, or the stress of moving, grief, job loss, whatever. Anything but what we feared it might be. Then came the teddy bear. It was sitting on the stairs one morning, small, brown, a blue ribbon tied around its neck. Neither of us had seen it before. We didn't own any toys. We didn't even have guests. Michelle picked it up slowly, turned it over and said, "This feels wrong." We placed it on the fireplace mantel. That night we found it in the middle of the hallway, torn open at the seams. The head was missing. Michelle lost it. She started sobbing, saying she'd been hearing a little girl's laughter coming from the baby room upstairs, the one with the painted clouds and faded daisies on the walls. I'd always felt cold going into that room, but I never said anything. That night, we both slept in the living room with the lights on. The bear was nowhere to be found the next morning. The scratching began the following week. It started with Michelle. 3 jagged scratches down the middle of her back. We both thought she must have done it in her sleep, but her nails were short. Too short. And besides, she swore she hadn't touched herself. Then it happened to me. One morning, I woke up and felt a sting under my shirt. I lifted it and saw 4 fresh, bloody lines across my ribs. It was like being clawed, like an animal had gotten to me. But there was nothing in the room. The marks kept appearing. We tried setting up a camera, but the battery would drain within minutes. Sometimes the footage would just cut. A frozen frame of the room, sometimes with a faint shadow at the edge of the image. Something barely there. One night, Michelle screamed from the hallway. I ran out to see her staring at the mirror. She said she saw a child standing behind her reflection, but when she turned around, no one was there. The mirror was fogged up, and written in the condensation were 2 words: "Stay here." There's so much more. The shadows that moved along the walls, even when the lights were off. The smell of burnt hair that would fill the kitchen at night. The knocking, always 3 times, always at 3 a.m., always from inside the walls. And then there was the attic. We didn't go up there. We were told it was sealed off due to structural issues, but one night the hatch was wide open. A cold draft poured down from above, and Michelle begged me not to look. I did anyway. Inside the attic was a single wooden rocking chair, facing the far corner. On the floor beneath it, dozens of crayon drawings, scribbled in a child's hand. All of them showed the same thing. A little girl with black holes for eyes, standing in the corner, pointing down. At us. We tried to leave. We packed our things, loaded the car, and made it to the end of the street. That's when Michelle started screaming. She couldn't breathe. Her chest felt like it was being crushed. We drove to the hospital. Nothing showed up on scans. When we returned home, all our boxes were in the driveway, unpacked. The front door was open. The teddy bear was sitting on the porch. Eventually, we reached out to a paranormal team from Kansas City. They spent 3 nights in the house, documenting everything. One of their investigators was pushed down the stairs. Another one left and never returned. Their audio logs caught voices, high-pitched laughter, sobbing, whispers saying, "He hurt me," and "She's not safe." They told us there was something in the house, more than one thing. One of them said it was like the energy had been feeding for decades, and it didn't want us to leave, not because it liked us, because we were food. We moved out a week later. We didn't even take everything, we just left, we never looked back. I've never returned to Kansas. Michelle and I are no longer together. She doesn't talk about what happened. I still dream about it. And sometimes, when the lights flicker in my apartment, I think about that house. I think about the attic. I think about the drawings. And I wonder if maybe something followed us. After the investigators left, the silence in the house became unbearable. Not the usual kind of silence you get when a place settles down. This was something else. Heavy, intentional, like the house had paused, waiting. Michelle had stopped sleeping altogether. She began having episodes of something close to dissociation. I'd find her standing in front of the hallway mirror for long stretches of time, just staring at her reflection, not moving, not blinking. One morning, I walked into the bathroom and found all the mirrors covered in towels. When I asked her why, she simply said, "She copies me when I'm not looking." That night, she locked the bedroom door from the inside. I heard her voice in the hallway, but when I knocked, begging to come in, she answered from inside the room, which means there were 2 voices, one outside, one inside, the exact same tone, the exact same words. She didn't remember any of it the next day. That's when I started documenting everything. Every flicker of the lights, every cold spot, every time something moved without explanation. I bought a notebook and wrote down the dates and times. One morning I woke up and all the kitchen cabinets were wide open. All the silverware was placed neatly in the center of the living room floor, arranged in a perfect circle. In the middle of the circle was a small white cloth, a child's handkerchief, with tiny blue embroidery, the letters S and R. We had never seen it before. I tried filming the scene. My camera glitched the second I hit record. I tried uploading what little footage I had. The file corrupted halfway through and vanished from my desktop. Michelle began to deteriorate. Not physically, at least not at first. She was becoming someone else. She'd write names over and over in her journal, names of people we didn't know. Margaret, Aidan, Thomas, each followed by dates, sometimes partial, sometimes exact. I cross-referenced a few of them online. They were real. Some were birth dates, most were death records, local obituaries, people who had lived and died within a few blocks of our house. One name stood out: Dr. Charles Finney, died 1911. The same doctor who reportedly botched Sallie's surgery. The house was watching us. It knew when we were scared. It fed off of it. There were nights I would hear crying from inside the vents. Not soft crying. Guttural, choking sobs, like a child in pain. I tried tracing the sound, but it moved, always staying just out of reach. One night, the crying stopped abruptly and was replaced by a loud thud from upstairs. I ran up to the second floor and found the baby's room wide open, the one with the hand-painted clouds and daisies. The rocking chair inside was moving gently, back and forth, back and forth. Michelle was already standing in the hallway, eyes wide. She whispered, "She's not crying anymore. She's angry." I started having dreams, or maybe they were something else. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced I'd been talking to someone, a little girl, standing at the foot of the bed, asking me to come upstairs. One time, I followed her in the dream. She led me up to the attic door. I opened it, and inside was a nursery, perfect and untouched, lit by a warm golden light. But all the toys were facing the wall, all of them, and on the far side of the room stood a woman, pale, motionless, holding something small in her arms. When she turned around, the baby in her arms had no face. I screamed myself awake. Michelle's episodes became more frequent. She began speaking in her sleep, sometimes in a voice that wasn't hers. Once, I recorded her whispering a phrase over and over. "He hurt me. I didn't scream loud enough. He kept going." It chilled me. I played it for her the next morning. She begged me to delete it. That same week, she tried to leave the house in the middle of the night. I found her at the end of the driveway, barefoot and shaking. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "If I stay, I'll be next." We tried to move. We packed everything, booked a rental truck, told no one. The night before we were supposed to leave, everything escalated. The house came alive. Lights exploded. Doors slammed. The sound of footsteps, dozens of them, echoed through the walls. Every single mirror in the house shattered simultaneously. And in the center of the living room floor, the teddy bear was back. But this time, it was soaked in something dark. Thick, red, still wet. We left the next morning with only what we could carry. Everything else stayed behind. Michelle and I never talked about what really happened in that house again. We divorced a year later. She moved back east. I haven't seen her since. But sometimes when I'm alone in the dark, I hear it again. That whisper, that little girl's voice calling from the other room, asking me to come upstairs. And I wonder if something from that house followed me, if Sallie ever left, or if she's just waiting. You'd think once we left the house, the nightmare would end. But it didn't. 3 weeks after we moved out, I started having nosebleeds, constant migraines. I'd be halfway through a work meeting and feel my ears ringing so loud I couldn't hear my own voice. Doctors said it was stress, PTSD, maybe long-term effects of sleep deprivation, but that didn't explain the dreams. They came back stronger, more vivid. In the dreams, I was always back in the house, but not as myself. I was someone else. I'd look down and see a blood-stained apron, old leather shoes, a surgical lamp above me flickering as I hovered over a girl on a wooden table screaming. Her mouth wide, her body held down by straps. Every time I tried to wake up, she turned and stared at me with black eyes, and in those eyes, I swear, I saw myself, watching, smiling. I became obsessed with the house. I told myself it was just residual trauma, but deep down I knew it was more. Something had latched onto me, something unfinished. I reached out to the local historical society in Atchison. I told them I was writing a paper on old medical practices. It was a lie. I just wanted access to the archives. I needed to know who the doctor was. The one from the stories, the one who operated on Sallie. They gave me a name I hadn't seen before. Dr. Henry Caldwell, born 1872, died 1913. His practice was registered to 508 Ender 2nd Street, the address of the house. Digging deeper, I found something strange. Caldwell wasn't just a family physician. He was known for alternative treatments. primitive psychology, electroshock therapy, even reports of early lobotomy attempts. But here's the kicker. He had no children of his own. Yet, in a letter written to his cousin in 1909, he refers to "my angel Sallie, who stays with me always, even in silence." The letter was never mailed. It was found in a trunk stored in the Atchison Museum basement. They let me see it. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic. In another letter, dated just weeks before his death, he writes, "She cries at night. I keep the door locked, but she always finds her way in. I see her face in the walls. Sometimes I think I never really buried her." I asked where the trunk was found. The museum clerk looked confused. "It was recovered from the attic of your house." I had to go back. I told myself it was for closure, but that was a lie. I needed answers. I needed to see it one more time. I drove back to Atchison. I parked across the street. The house was still empty, boarded up, grass dead, windows dark. But as I sat there, I saw movement in the upper window just for a second, like someone stepping away from the glass. I didn't go in that night. I waited until morning. Just after sunrise, I walked around to the back and found the cellar door unlocked. The air was thick, humid, rotting, like something had been left open too long. I descended the wooden stairs. Slowly. There were markings on the walls, carvings, a mix of Latin phrases and children's drawings, some done in crayon, others scratched in with something sharp. One phrase repeated 3 times, "Do not cut, she can still feel it." I stood there, frozen. My flashlight flickered once, then again. Then the light cut out completely. In the dark I heard it. That voice, a girl, just inches from my ear. "You came back." I don't remember how I got out. I woke up hours later in my car, parked a block away. My nose was bleeding. My shirt was torn. On the passenger seat was something I didn't bring with me, a leather-bound notebook. Inside, the journal of Dr. Caldwell. I'll never forget what I read. Pages and pages of entries, erratic, violent, haunted, descriptions of failed treatments. Test subjects. He referred to Sallie not as a patient, but as the host. In one entry, dated October 1908, "She is not dead. Her flesh gave out, but something else remained. It moves through the house. It touches the walls. It calls to me." Another. "I hear her voice in the vents. She tells me where to cut. She shows me the others, the ones she wants. She feeds on the ones who stay." And one final entry, smeared in what looked like dried blood. "They will come. More will come. She is patient." That was the last time I went near the house. I mailed the journal to the museum anonymously. I've since changed my number, moved across the country. I've cut off almost everyone who knew me during that time. But none of that stopped the dreams. The attic, the chair, the circle of toys. And sometimes just before I wake up, I see her, a small figure, standing at the foot of my bed. Her mouth is stitched shut, but I hear her voice anyway. "Don't try to run, you came back." I told myself I was done. I told myself I'd never go back, that I could rebuild, that if I deleted the photos, threw away the tapes, burned the notebooks, it would go away. But it didn't. 3 months after finding Caldwell's journal, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. The message was short, a woman's voice, trembling, breathless. She came to me in the mirror. She said your name. It was Michelle. That was the first time I'd heard her voice since the divorce. I called back. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. 2 days later, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. No message. Just an attachment. A photo. Low quality. Dim lighting. It showed a cracked bathroom mirror. Scratched into the glass were 4 words. "You brought her here that same night. I had a dream." Except this time, it wasn't just the attic. I saw Michelle, sitting on the edge of a bathtub, crying. The lights were flickering. Water was rising from the drain, thick and black. And in the corner of the room just behind her stood the girl, smiling. I drove to Michelle's apartment the next morning. Her car was still there, but she wasn't answering the door. I got the building manager to let me in. The apartment was cold, too cold for summer. The lights didn't work. On the kitchen floor were dozens of torn-up pieces of paper, notes, drawings, letters, all from Michelle. I spent an hour piecing them together. They weren't just notes, they were confessions. Pleas, journal entries, some addressed to me, some addressed to someone she called the girl in the wall. She wrote about how she couldn't sleep, how the mirrors wouldn't stay covered, how she'd see someone watching her from the corners of every room. She wrote, "She says I'm next." She said he opened the door again. She won't stop smiling. There was one final note, folded, tucked under her pillow. It simply read, "She's inside me now." Michelle was found 2 days later in a motel outside Lawrence, alive, but catatonic. She hasn't spoken since. She won't look at anyone. Doctors say she's suffering from a total psychological collapse, but I've seen her eyes. I've seen what's behind them. It's not Michelle. After that, I stopped fighting it. I stopped pretending it was all in my head. This wasn't just a ghost story. It wasn't grief. It wasn't trauma. It was a door, and I opened it. I returned to the house one final time. I don't know what I thought I would find. Redemption, answers, a way to undo what had been set in motion. It was quiet when I arrived. No lights, no sounds. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was as we had left it. Boxes, broken mirrors, the faint smell of sulfur and dust. I walked through slowly, like retracing the steps of a crime scene. Then I heard it, the soft creak of a rocking chair, coming from upstairs. I climbed the stairs. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. Shadows clung to the edges of the wallpaper. The baby's room was open. Inside, the rocking chair was moving on its own, just like before. But this time there was something in it. Not a doll, not a toy, not an object. A body. Small, still, wrapped in yellowed linens, a child's corpse. Eyes open, smiling. I couldn't move. Then the whisper came again. Not from the room, not from the walls, from inside my own head. "You let me out." Suddenly the body in the chair sat upright. Bones cracked, skin split at the joints. It stepped off the chair and took one slow step toward me. I ran. But the house had changed. The hallways twisted. The doors were wrong. Every time I turned a corner, I ended up back in that same room, back with her. I don't remember how I escaped. All I know is I woke up in a ditch off Highway 7, 30 miles from Atchison. My hands were burned. My tongue was swollen. I was missing 2 fingernails. My car was never found. Since that night, I've seen her in reflections, in windows, in puddles. She doesn't speak anymore. She just stares. And when she smiles, I know she's not done. Because the house never wanted to haunt us. It wanted to use us. It's been almost a year since I set foot in that house again. Almost a year since I saw the thing. Sallie, or whatever it was that called itself her. The one that took her name and twisted it into something unrecognizable. The one that dragged me back into the nightmare I thought I'd escaped. I know what I have to do now. I know there's no running from it, because I've seen her. I've felt her. And she's still inside me. I tried to leave, I really did. I moved to a different state, changed my number again. I even went to therapy, but nothing helped. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still see her. Those empty black eyes staring at me, her mouth twisting into a grin that would haunt me for days. I thought I could fight it, thought I could outrun it, but the more I tried to escape, the more it followed. The mirrors, the shadows, the whispers in the dead of night. The fear grew, twisting in my chest, until one day I realized it wasn't just following me, it was inside me. It started with the dreams, but now they weren't dreams anymore. I'd wake up with bruises on my arms, scratches across my neck. My fingers would be trembling, as if something had taken hold of me while I slept. I found myself thinking thoughts that weren't mine. I'd walk into a room and feel an urge to do something, anything, just to see if I could control myself. But I couldn't. Then came the night the mirrors spoke. I hadn't seen a mirror in months. I'd thrown them out, covered up every reflective surface in my apartment. But that night, while I was in the bathroom, I saw something. It wasn't the reflection of me, it was her. She stood behind me, grinning, her face twisted in agony and joy. Her eyes were dark, pitch black, staring straight through me. And in that moment, I understood. Sallie was never gone. She was never going to be gone. She had never been a spirit. Not really. She was a doorway, a vessel, a part of something older than the house itself. The truth was buried in the journals I'd found. Caldwell knew. He knew exactly what he had unleashed. The child's soul, the one who died in agony, and something else, something darker. When she died on that operating table, she didn't just pass into the afterlife. She was changed. Caldwell had opened something that could never be shut. Sallie wasn't a ghost. She was a parasite. And the house, that house, was her host. I returned to Atchison once again. This time I didn't bother with the front door. I knew it wouldn't let me in. The house had always been locked, always closed. But I had a key now. I went to the back. The door creaked open like it had been waiting for me. The air was thick and stale. The smell of rot was stronger than before. The shadows stretched longer, deeper. As I stepped inside, the temperature dropped. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about the warnings or the fear. I knew what needed to be done. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, past the baby's room, the room where she had died, where her spirit had fed for so long. I reached the attic. I opened the door. It was just like the dream, the golden light, the rocking chair. But now there was something else. The walls were covered in images, pictures of me, of Michelle, of the people who had lived here before, drawn in crayon, carved into the wood. Some of the faces were unrecognizable, distorted. And then I saw it in the center of the room. A mirror. It wasn't just any mirror. This one was different. It had been there all along, hidden behind the wall, hidden for a reason. And I knew then it was the source, the thing that had kept this house alive, kept it feeding, kept it waiting for someone like me to unlock it. I reached out. The second my fingers touched the glass, the room went dark. I heard her. "You let me in." She was here in the room behind me, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I turned around, the mirror was gone. She was standing in front of me. Her face was no longer a child's. It was twisted, deformed. Her skin peeled back like old paper, revealing a darkness beneath. It wasn't Sallie. It was whatever had consumed her. "You're part of me now." And with that, I knew I was lost. I don't know how long I've been here. I don't know how long I've been writing this. Hours, days, weeks. All I know is the house is still here, and I'm still here, and Sallie, she's still here in me. I can feel her now, I can hear her whispers. She's part of me, and she will never let go. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories from the darkest corners of the world. And if you've ever had a chilling encounter that you can't explain, share it with us in the comments below. You might just find your story featured in our next episode. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and never look into the mirror too long.